Hello and welcome to the State and Provincial Representative Training for Committee Liaison work. The purpose of this training is for you to understand your role as it relates to Northwest NWACUHO's various committees and understand the purpose of committees within Northwest NWACUHO. First of all, what are committees? Committees are groups of members at large, not typically of the board, that are given a specific area of focus and created via decision by the board of directors. While committees can contain board members, they typically do not. Currently, Northwest NWACUHO has several committees. We have a Diversity and Inclusion Committee that's focused on making sure Northwest NWACUHO's practice and projects are diverse and inclusive of our membership. We have a Professional Development Committee who's responsible for our First Friday webinars, driving conferences, and other PD opportunities throughout the region. We have a Membership Engagement Committee, and that one's all about how we talk to our membership and how we work with them. And then finally, we have a Communications Committee that's responsible for managing how we communicate with our membership, such as social media, listservs, and that kind of thing. The other committee that is technically still a committee of Northwest NWACUHO, though not often talked about in this context, is our Local Arrangements Committee. Their primary responsibility is giving each annual conference its local flair, and as a state and provincial rep, you'll be involved in helping them as well. It's important to understand the difference between a committee and a task force. A committee is a standing group of people that exist from year to year with no finite end date or specific project that they need to achieve. A task force, on the other hand, is designed to achieve a specific outcome, and it disbands once that goal has been achieved. For example, our Master Planning Group is actually a task force, not a standing committee of Northwest NWACUHO, and we only strike it once every 5 years. As a state and provincial representative, you're responsible for serving as a liaison to the board of directors between the board and those committees. The board will sometimes have directives for committees to follow through on, and the committees will sometimes have questions for the board of directors. Most of the time, that goes through you. That means you'll need to be prepared to give both groups regular updates, and to do that, you'll need to attend all the committee meetings. You also have to ensure that the committee's work aligns with Northwest NWACUHO goals. They are largely independent groups that are chaired by members at large, but we want to make sure that the work they're doing does align with the other work that Northwest NWACUHO is trying to accomplish. You also need to support the chair or chairs of the committees. One state and provincial rep will also serve as a general committee coordinator, and they're responsible for the solicitation and selection of committee chairs, as well as making sure each state and provincial rep does have a committee that they are responsible for. Each committee should have a current terms of reference and an up-to-date membership roster of who's participating in that committee. These allow us to have some sort of organizational continuity in the event that a chair or a co-chair moves on. If your committee doesn't have a terms of reference or a membership roster, make sure that the chairs do that as their first order of business. Additionally, co-chairs and chairs should have access to the Dropbox, but not the whole thing. There's one folder that is specific to our committees, and they should have access to that where all this information is stored. In terms of timeline, committees should really be working on goal setting and planning between February and May. Typically, this is when we get the most members in, and that's when they can really influence the course of a committee. May is also when our board meeting is, and as such, we can talk about what the committees plan to do for the year ahead and decide whether or not that aligns with Northwest NWACUHO's strategy or not, and give them additional direction if need be. Between May and October, the committee should really be working towards the goals they set in February and May, and that allows us at the October board meeting to provide them any feedback that they might request on their projects. From November to February, they're finishing those projects with the board feedback, and they're preparing to present that information at the annual conference. And finally, in February during the conference, committee members are responsible for letting people know what they did and soliciting new members for that committee. Typically, committees will have co-chairs if possible. We find this gives us some stability if one of those chairs has to move on to a new position or can no longer be involved with the association. Each are equally responsible for the schedule of meetings, setting of agendas, and keeping the committee members accountable for their work. In terms of how we select committee chairs, please refer to the committee chair selection policy on the next page. Committees are still very much a developing part of Northwest NWACUHO, and as we develop more information on them, we'll post it up here. State and provincial reps are critical to the operation of our committees, so please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.